exceed $425 million. So to wrap it all up for you, that means in this year alone, 2017 alone, more than 6,300 rental housing units across the state have been awarded through these programs by the state and will now be built. This is going to be extraordinary for families who right now are living someplace, as the mayor mentioned, that's outdated, doesn't have the amenities or the livability that a modern unit should have, or those who don't have any place to live at all. It'll also help about 1,400 seniors across the state who obviously, when they're on a fixed income, need to have some affordable housing for them not to have to leave our state, but to be able to stay in our state and stay with their families, stay with the folks that they love the most. Obviously, also, we care about folks in the special needs community, and this will represent about 400 additional units for those who have special needs, so that they don't have to be institutionalized. But our administration has continued to move away from institutionalizing those who have developmental disabilities and moving them towards them living mainstream in our communities so they can really feel like a part of the place they live. By the end of this year, the administration will have created 36,000 housing opportunities, affordable housing opportunities throughout the state, including 26,000 units of multifamily rental housing, 2,000 housing units for the special needs population, and 8,000 for sale home ownership opportunities through HMFA's single-family mortgage products and single-family construction loan program. Getting affordable housing in our state is something that everybody is always concerned about. And the fact is, this administration has not just talked about it, we've done it. We haven't done it through litigation in the courts. We haven't done it through fights with municipalities. We haven't done it any other way except the old-fashioned way, which is to say, who can we partner with at the local, county, state, and federal level, bring all those resources together in an organized way, and then put them in the places where people need them. Woodbridge is one of those places where people need more modern, affordable housing opportunities. It's part of what keeps the diversity of this township what it is, and that diversity leads to the extraordinary cultural fabric that you feel every time you go through the downtown in Woodbridge. Every time I go through the downtown of Woodbridge, it strikes me that no matter what your ethnic or religious or racial background is, that you have a place to feel comfortable in Woodbridge. That atmosphere starts by the mayor in his leadership creating that sense of welcoming in this municipality, but it's also the men and women who live in Woodbridge who make everyone here feel welcome, every culture feel welcome, and in some of the divided situations we have in our effect on the lives of the people that they touch. Local 72 in Wick in November of 2009, unemployment was at 9%, and the at least we don't go overboard on this. Remember that Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner, George Washington was a slave owner, James Madison was a slave owner, as was Richard Stockton. I think we need to look at the totality of what they did and what they were dedicating their life to. Stockton was dedicating his life to having a freer country full with liberty and opportunity, and he owned slaves. That was wrong. But I don't know that what we should be doing is removing every remembrance of anyone who ever participated in that way, regardless of what else they did in their lives. In the end, that's the decision for the people at Stockton University to make. It's not my decision. They can make whatever decision they want. But I want us to be careful about the distinctions we make. Those who were attempting to keep our country in the dark ages, people like Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, Jefferson Davis, those folks, in my view, don't deserve tribute. But the men and women who were trying to move our country in a different direction, I think at least deserve consideration of the totality of their lives. So I hope that as people make these decisions, that's what they do. that they take in the totality of people's lives into consideration. But in the end, for Stockton, this is going to be their decision to make, and is their decision to make, and I wouldn't interfere one way or the other. Phil Murphy having a private meeting with Rob. Well, Phil Murphy meeting with more out-of-staters, you know. It's a Massachusetts guy, a Massachusetts liberal, an Elizabeth Warren liberal, who, you know, wants to meet now with Hollywood. Get ready, New Jersey. You know, I mean, seriously. Now we want Hollywood stars that are going to meet with a guy who's running for governor who says he's going to raise taxes at least by $1.3 billion. Imagine this, everybody. That's what he admits to being willing to do when he's running. Imagine what he'll do if you give him power. It'll be much more than $1.3 billion. And I said this to the folks at American Dream, the hard hats who were there that day, and I'll say it to these folks here. He will tell you that he's only going to raise taxes on the rich, but there aren't enough rich people in this state anymore to get taxes just from them. He's coming for your wallet. See, I put you back to work so that you could keep your money and you could spend it the way you wanted to spend it. Mr. Murphy thinks that he knows how to spend it better than you do. I'd never believe that, and that's why we've never raised taxes during my time as governor in this state. We don't need to. There are other ways we can deal with these circumstances, and you know, if Robert De Niro and Harvey Weinstein have some great ideas about other taxes for him to raise, I'm sure they had a great conversation. But I don't know what he's doing talking to out-of-staters as an out-of-stater to try to become the governor of this state. I was born here. I was raised here. I'm a New Jersey guy, and I think I understand how sensitive New Jerseyans are to taxes. Bottom line is this. If you think you're not paying enough taxes, the choice in this election is really easy, because Phil Murphy will raise them for you. Don't worry. If you think you're paying more than enough now, then you better take a long, hard look at what you're doing in this election. Elections have consequences, everybody. President Obama was right about that. We learn that every day at every level of government. Elections have consequences. And if Phil Murphy is taking his time to meet with Robert De Niro and Harvey Weinstein, then you got to start to wonder about what his priorities are and what his ambitions are. I'm not, as I've said before, Senator Menendez, like every other American citizen, deserves the presumption of innocence. The government has not yet proven anything regarding Senator Menendez. They will have their opportunity to prove their case beginning on September 6th. And it would be wrong for me, or I believe anybody else in a position of responsible leadership in this state, to speculate about what's going to happen. Senator Menendez deserves an opportunity to have this case presented before a jury of his peers and have him present a defense. And then let that jury of 12 men and women make the decision about whether they think the government has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Senator Menendez committed any crimes while in office. If so, they'll take the actions they need to take. And then I will take whatever actions I need to take. But I am not going to engage in that speculation. I had that job for 7 years. And I know the responsibility of being U.S. Attorney is that everyone is entitled to the presumption of innocence, and that it's the government's responsibility, if you're going to bring charges, to prove them beyond a reasonable doubt. Senator Menendez deserves that, and he does not deserve us speculating about all of this prior to one bit of evidence being presented in that courtroom, one witness being put on that stand, one document being introduced. He's our United States Senator. He deserves, like every other United States. What do I think about Steve Lonigan running for Congress? Well, I beat him once. Steve's an interesting character, and we'll see who else runs in that race before I make any kind of determinations about who I might support or not. No, there's been no vacillation, Claude. No, there's been no vacillation. The president made an announcement that this is a national emergency, and he said that his lawyers are working on the right paperwork for him to declare it in the most complete and total way. So your question is absolutely incorrect. The basis of your question is wrong, as usual. So I got nothing more to say to you. Anything else? I got nothing more to say to you. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Listen, I don't think it's ever a good idea to shut down the government. That's why when Speaker Prieto shut down the government for 3 days back in the beginning of July, I thought it was wrong. And worked hard to make sure it got reopened. I think it's a failure whenever government is shut down. Our job is to run the government, and whenever it's shut down, it's a failure of everybody. And it would be the same thing for the president and Congress if government were shut down for any reason. That's a failure. Our job is to run the government, not to shut down the government, and that's why I was so angry with the Speaker for refusing to send me a budget to sign back on June 30th. Luckily, by July 3rd, we got it resolved. But any number of days where the government is shut down is a failure, and it would be the same thing on the federal level as well. I think those will operate on separate tracks, quite frankly, and the state is working with towns to try to help. But in the end, this is the failure of the state legislature. You know, I have begged them for 8 years to send me a bill to change the affordable housing laws in this state. I've tried to act unilaterally when they wouldn't act, and the Supreme Court stopped us from doing that. This should not be a burden that's placed on each municipality to have to be in the midst of litigation over this. The state should set a policy that works. Up to this point, they haven't. And no legislation to this point has been sent to my desk in 8 years that would fix the affordable housing problem. That's an awful failure by the legislature. I tried to operate as an executive when they wouldn't act. The Supreme Court wouldn't permit me to do it. But this is an awful burden to be placed on local municipal officials and local taxpayers that shouldn't be. And that's why the state's trying to step in here and help a little bit, but it won't solve the problem. The problem needs to be solved on a broader statewide level by the state finally stepping up and doing things that mayors and councils across the state are willing to work with them on, and that will help to solve the problem. I've worked for 8 years to try to do that. I've had a recalcitrant legislature, most particularly the state assembly. The Senate has passed the bill twice that I said I would sign, and Jerry Green in the assembly has refused to even post it for a hearing in the assembly. So you've had one-man rule on affordable housing. And so for the mayors and council people, local taxpayers who don't like what's been happening on affordable housing, you know, I've said it many times, call Jerry Green. Because two speakers, Oliver and Prieto, have allowed Jerry Green to run affordable housing policy in the assembly, and it's caused us to be at a stalemate for 8 years. Not even giving me a bill that I could reject. No bill at all. And that's unacceptable. Yeah. If I have any advice for Kim Godonski, numbers today,